Well, I've been thinking about one specific topic. I don't know, for the past, I don't know, since my childhood, what I saw around myself was some kind of destruction. First of all, the civil war, or the war between different national groups in ex-Yugoslavia, and all this poverty which started at the beginning of the 90s. So what I experienced during my childhood and my growing up was constant destruction, constant time where the things are not moving up, but one stage of either of stagnation or becoming even worse and worse. And when I was working on a research for another project, I saw these documentary footages of these working actions of these labor brigades, and I was astonished. So I saw hundreds and hundreds of people on a vast field working like crazy, like ants, and making constructions, buildings, bridges, roads, almost out of nowhere, almost completely without machinery. So I asked myself, how is it possible? What happened there? What was their motivation to do such a hard labor voluntarily, and how it is today completely different? So when I asked myself this question, I decided that I want to try to make a documentary film about this, and I found some people who were participating in the voluntary brigades. I found some people who could testify about the shock workers. Shock workers, which in Russian and in Slavic languages the term is udarnik, is the person who gives more than it's capable, than we think that the human being is capable to do. So there's been one event in the Yugoslav history which was very traumatic, and this was the breaking up with the Soviet Union and with the entire Eastern Bloc. So at one point in the year 1948, 3 years after the end of Second World War, Yugoslavia was kicked out of this socialistic community of countries and was left alone. And at that point, the struggle was very hard to continue the rebuilding of the country, now relying on its own forces in the beginning. And at that point, this regime, this country, new young socialistic country, Yugoslavia, needed a hero. That hero was Alija Sirotanović, a miner from Breza in central Bosnia. So he decided to do something crazy to beat the famous record of Stakhanov, the famous record of how many coal one man can dig during the 8-hour shift. And he did it and became the hero of labor. And his example was kind of a role model for many other people to try to give their best, to try to go to the very end of their possibilities when it comes what they can do and what they can achieve with their hands in one day, just to continue the rebuilding of the country and to establish one new independent socialistic way of living for that country in those years. With the elderly generation of Yugoslav people, they all truly, honestly believed in the idea of socialism, in the idea of equal society, because when the regime was changed after the Second World War, I mean, kind of common people were given the rights which they couldn't even dream of earlier. So kind of the children of the peasants got the possibility to come to the city, to go to university, to become the engineers, the lawyers, the professors, all these things that was not imaginable for the most of the population only a couple of years earlier. So they saw that socialism and that this Yugoslav way of socialism and Tito personally made it possible for them, and they truly really believed in it. So they of course Tito's regime and Yugoslav self-governed socialism, as they called it, was not the role model. I mean, the right democratic society from the today's point of view, but for the people who were growing up there, who came from villages or some rural and unemployed parts of the country, they were given the possibility, their life chance to make something out of their lives. So actually they were building their future homes, they were building their future hospitals, schools, they were building the infrastructure for them and their children. And this is why they are so proud of it. They with their hands, they build the possibility for the future generation to live in. And still today, for example, in the film you can see how they started building the new Belgrade. So the city or the part of Belgrade which is called the New Belgrade, only some 50-60 years ago there was nothing, it was just a field. And most of the buildings, now there live around 100,000 people. Most of the buildings were built by this volunteer brigade. So people were actually building those buildings where they later moved on and lived. For me it was interesting that all this older generation, they had kind of active approach to life. They were kind of living actively, and I mean today in Serbia and in other parts of ex-Yugoslavia, younger generation are always complaining, we have no chances in life, we are doomed to live with our parents till, I don't know, age 30, 35, there is no job. So this is kind of, for me it's strange that this active and passive approach to life, which unfortunately is still today a question. This film deals with the comparison of two systems, of two ways of how the society can be established, but only on one specific example of ex-Yugoslavia. And what happened there is completely different than in other communist countries in Europe. For example, in Romania, the democratic revolution obviously bring a lot of improvements to the country and a lot of improvements to the life of everybody here. So the standard of living improved, not to mention the freedom of speech and all these things. But on the contrary, majority of people in almost all ex-Yugoslav republic see this change from socialism to capitalism not as something which improved their life, but something which did completely the opposite. Because they were living till the end of the 80s in some kind of mixture of socialism and capitalism, and when they switched to this pure capitalism, which was especially during the 80s mixed with nationalism and war, the whole system collapsed and the quality of their life dramatically changed. And for example, when the salaries dropped from like 1,000 or 2,000 Deutschmarks in 80s to 100 Deutschmarks in 90s, they of course see this as a complete destruction, not as some positive change. So this is kind of paradox why this so-called freedom and democracy in Yugoslavia, especially during 90s, didn't bring much good, but on the contrary, it's still nowadays that I think some expertise and some researchers showed that it's going to take, I think, another 15 years for Serbia, Bosnia, and I think also for Croatia to get to the standard of living that they had in, let's say, 87, 88, 89. So this is one of the paradoxes that this film is actually talking about.